You're about to listen to a podcast full of wonder, excitement, and discovery. It's time for an adventure through Odyssey. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Adventures Through Odyssey podcast, Odyssey Revisited. I'm Will, here with Gabe, John, and Elizabeth, the official new crew of the podcast. And we're now screen capturing upon Elizabeth's suggestion, so the feminine touch has been added to the podcast. Now you see, the great part about recording is we can now see John's face every time I say something stupid.
This should be entertaining.
That's true. That's true.
Alright, today we're going to be taking a look at Album 22, The Changing Times. So we're going to kick this off with, forgive me while I pull up the wiki here. And this might be cutting into the footage, I'm sorry. George Under Pressure, episode 258, written by Paul McCusker, aired October 8th, 1994. George Barkley is under so much pressure in the seminary that his family kidnaps him to give him some time. Unfortunately, the plan blows up in his face.
I think as pastors' children, we can all relate to this one a little bit.
Yeah, although I can't remember my dad ever getting too stressed about it. And if he did, he did a good job of hiding it.
The most,
One bowl of cereal after another.
Yes. How many times have we looked in the pantry to find the cereal box that was bought yesterday gone and asked who it was, and it was our dad?
Yep.
Okay, let's keep going then. Gabe?
Well, I think this is a really good Barkley episode because they seem to be the family that actually has really problems that I think more people could maybe relate to.
Yeah. George becoming
Not saying any other family can't relate to any other Odyssey family.
But last week.
Yeah.
And let's be honest,
George...
it was cool to have, like, a pastor's kids specific episode because I feel like a lot of Odyssey listeners are definitely pastor's kids.
That's probably true. That might be why they did the Barkley as a pastor thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if we've got any good stories about my dad stressing out. I mean...
My dad doesn't... Well, okay, he does get stressed out, but there's not a lot of great stories. He just gets stressed out.
He's a very relaxed person, let's put it that way.
But it's, like, obvious when he gets stressed. He'll just, like, go in another room, and I'll be like, Dad, are you okay? He's like, I'm fine.
No, just go into the basement and kick the dog out.
The gem story from my father, and the only reason I'm telling it is because he used it in a sermon, is at one point when there was a particularly large amount of stress in the church. The dog was barking like wanting food at dinner, so he put him in his crate, and the dog kept barking, and let's just say that night ended with the dog in the crate that had a dent on it caused by my dad's foot. I would not tell that story if he had used it in a sermon, but he used it in a sermon, and now the little old ladies sometimes still ask me if my dog's okay.
Poor Sparty.
Oh, man.
All right, moving on to... Oh, and also, let's convince George we're all getting free haircuts to kidnap him.
Pastor's family, frugal, typical, I don't even know, like, how to describe that one.
Yeah. Oh, here's a pastor's family frugal story. My mom never buys Kleenex.
That's
Well,
a
that's
Grandma
true.
Barb
Or-
story.
Paper towel. Well, no, because...
Yeah, that's true. That's Grandma.
Well, here's where the story gets funny, because one time we were in the grocery store, I must have been like 5, and my dad's allergies were super bad. And my mom only buys Kleenex when anyone comes to visit, so she picked up a box of Kleenex for him, and I asked her, Mom, who's coming to visit?
Aww,
Here's
cute.
Sparty, just so we all know that he's alive and well.
Yes.
And the cutest dog on the planet. Sorry, Hershey.
Okay, John,
Wow.
find a picture of Hershey while I, John, find a picture of Hershey while I read the next description.
Okay.
Tom for Mayor, Parts 1 and 2, written by Paul McCusker, aired October 29th and November 5th, 1944. Philip Glossman arrives in town to run tests on Tom Riley's farm. Meanwhile, Mayor Bill Jenkins steps down, which forces both Tom and Bart Rathbone to run for mayor. I mean, in lieu of complete idiots running for public office, this is a very appropriate episode.
Yeah, this is a pretty typical,
What are you trying to say there, Will?
good guy versus
Yeah, I
bad
thought we
guy
were
thing.
done.
Yeah.
Thought we were done making political comments on this podcast, Will. I thought we'd been over this topic before.
You know,
I mean, if you want to start it, we can go.
I was going back and listening to old podcasts this week, and I was just laughing so hard listening to you and John go at it about outside references.
Yeah, thanks.
But I mean, this was like a pretty typical good guy versus bad guy. I don't think it was entirely necessary. I think it got pretty dramatic for like a kids show, but it was fine.
Right, and
Yeah,
go ahead.
I don't know why Bart Rathbone would get that much traction from
Yeah,
Mayor.
that's my only problem. Like,
It's Odyssey.
I feel it's really unrealistic, but
Right. I mean, why not have Glossman run for mayor? At least that way Tom would have a little competition.
Right,
Right.
like, it feels like that's a little... Like, why would people really vote for him? I mean, most of the town knows how much of a, like, jerk he is.
I feel like Philip Glassman would actually have some weight behind him becoming mayor.
Right. And then also Tom's minimalist campaign ad. You don't need to know what I stand for because you already know. The only other person who could do that in Odyssey is Wit. And even then, I don't think he'd win.
Yeah, and I feel like Wit wouldn't want to get into that much drama.
Right. And Tom Riley becoming mayor is almost the first Timothy Center thing, because they do it, and then he's gone for quite a while. Like, they never do anything interesting with it. But it does kick off the Darkness Before Dawn arc, which is dropped for 2 albums and may pull up again, so...
yeah.
But nice to see Glossman come back. This is also the only Odyssey episode to have a cold open. You know, something before the theme song that isn't a skit with Chris.
Interesting.
Though, I'm gonna be honest, if this is the episode I'm thinking of it, I think it has one of the really funny Odyssey line.
Which is...
Stop in the name of the environment!
You know,
I'm pretty sure it's
I
this.
was funny human interest story in the name of the environment. I was filling out an application for something the other day, and it had like an electronic version, and then it said underneath, here's a link to a printable version if you want to support the loggers.
Okay.
I kind of laughed a lot. I was like,
Oh my.
let's not support the environment, let's support the tree loggers.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fairness, you know, if this episode were made today, they wouldn't have to use a VHS tape to capture those guys who were dumping chemicals and have to run, and they could just whip out their phone and record it.
Oh, no,
Come on,
it's the
Google Glass.
lumberjacks. Support the lumberjacks,
Well,
not the
oh
loggers.
my.
I
Well,
I don't even want to go there.
close enough. John, did you find a picture of Hershey?
Not the one I wanted to, so we'll do that later. And besides, most of the people listening to this probably can't see, so...
Oh, yes. I did realize we were just making a visual reference to our new visual podcast format.
Just keep going. Next
Which,
episode,
in fairness, is
Will.
working pretty... What?
Next episode.
Okay.
Go.
You're right. Alright. A Call for Reverend Jimmy, episode 289, written by Marshall Younger, aired November 19th, 1994. Jimmy Barkley is told he would make a good pastor, so he tries to teach a Sunday school class. Meanwhile, Donna feels awkward when her father starts using her as an example during sermons.
There's an obligatory picture of Hershey from Instagram since I made that reference.
Thank you. Now, we all have our father telling a story about us story, so we'll get to that in a moment. But what about the subplot with Jimmy?
Well, I've definitely had almost, like, very often people ask me if I'm going to be a pastor. And it gets kind of annoying, but, you know, it comes with the territory, I guess.
I do remember right before I went to college, the same thing happened to me.
So, obviously I'm a girl, so that hasn't happened to me, but one of my friends who is a comm major at my college went into college as a communication major. His dad is a pastor, and 3 weeks in decided he wanted to change to biblical exposition as his major and become a pastor. His dad told the church about it the day after he switched his major, and he's now, like, pledged to that church his freshman year into college with, like, 8 more years of school to go.
Oh dear. Yeah, they do nail the old ladies annoying you after the sermon aspect of church.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
That's-
So
yeah.
I have obviously not been at my parents' church this entire semester except once because I've been in a different state. But the one time that I was back a few weeks ago, I was a sermon illustration. The one time I was
Of
back.
course.
And I was like trying to stay semi-anonymous. No. So,
Yeah.
anonymous
And our
pastor's
younger
daughter,
sister was
what?
one twice this morning.
Wait, Leo was a sermon illustration? What happened?
Well, I'm sure Libby has heard this one. He kind of switches it between all of us. It's the
Oh my
brat.
gosh. Usually that one's about me because I probably was a brat as a child.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
one of my friends once pointed out that if it's a good story, my dad always talks about Gabe or Leah. But if it's a bad story, it's one of my children or one of my daughters, and he's like, I finally figured out that's you. I don't know if I want you hanging out with my daughter anymore.
Oh my. Well, and we'll get to our sermon illustration stories in a moment, but my biggest problem with the whole thing with Donna is that, the stories start off innocent enough. She asked for a private hotline as a kid. Really non-offensive thing, but then he tells the story about the boy that happened like a week ago. Okay. I know
Yeah, that was a little.
I know
Yeah.
fathers sometimes maybe aren't 100% in grasp of what's embarrassing, but really, George?
That's a good way to put it. Not 100% in grasp.
Right.
And it was like 5 years after the fact.
No, it was like a
But
week
since-
after the fact.
Yeah, I know. If it was 5 years, I could see maybe, but it's like only like a month or something.
Yeah.
It's a little fresh.
It's yeah.
Just a tiny
Especially if it's
bit.
like a bad illustration. If it's a good illustration, by all means. But if it's embarrassing, it needs to be like years removed from my life.
The nice thing is, whenever my dad tells an illustration, he always messes it up.
That's true. He does.
You know what's nice? I don't know if my dad uses me in illustrations anymore, and I would rather keep it that way.
Yeah, John, how often does Dad use me when I'm not there?
Not much. He's really exhausted all the good stories.
You know,
at
Well,
this
there was a
point.
period of my life when I would be the only one sitting in the front row. I was the only one who went to the service I went to, and my dad would be preaching. So I would stand next to my dad during worship, and then for the sermon I would move and go sit by my friend's family because I didn't want him to tell a story about me and me be the only one sitting in the front seat where everyone makes awkward eye contact with you.
Yeah.
And you have tuned into True Confessions of Pastor's Kid. Come back next week for a 3-part special.
Yeah.
How to deal with that annoying old lady no one at the church likes.
Hey, that's me.
Sherry.
William.
Don't.
What? I'm kidding.
Don't
Uh.
name names.
All right, now that we've
But-
unloaded all of our baggage, unless John had something to add.
No, not really.
Also, there's a
Pretty
guy
good over here.
pacing around
Although-
outside in the back of my footage, and it's kind of amusing.
Well, keep
Yeah,
an eye
I'm-
out for that. Go ahead, John.
Another thing.
Next episode,
Just keep going.
Oh,
Yeah.
I will say, though, as a pastor's kid, I did teach a Sunday school lesson about a month ago. Didn't you think it went pretty well, John?
It went, at least mediocrely,
Well,
I would say.
It was better than Jimmy's Crash and Burn.
I mean, yeah, it was, but I don't even remember what it was. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, let's keep going. It was good, I just don't want to bring up stuff. Okay,
I
keep
got
going.
awkward.
All right. Name not a...
Never mind.
What?
Oh, I like this one.
Name not
this
a
is
number.
one of my all-time favorite Odyssey episodes.
Okay. Part 1
There we
and
go.
2. Episode 209 and 291 aired November 26 and December 3rd, 1994, written by Phil Lawler. Jason Whittaker, on his last mission for the National Security Agency, helps Tasha Forbes fight Mustafa and Red Scorpion to stop the threat of global biological terrorism. Meanwhile, Regis Blackard shows up again, seeming to be on the good
Yeah,
side.
right. This is a good episode. I love anything with Tasha and Jason in it, and just like the mystery that comes with it. Because I was like totally a mystery person as a child, like read every single newspaper. So to me, this was like one of my favorite episodes to listen to, along with the Novacom series. Just like over and over again, I would listen to this one.
Right. Are Jason and Tasha your OTP?
If Tasha was a Christian, no.
It happened to Jeff. It could happen again.
Flashback to
That's
last
true.
week's episode when I said I fangirled over the one pilot. I always forget his name coming back. Okay, Jeff and
Jeff
Connie were
Lewis.
like the original Odyssey OTP. Like, that's how I see them in my mind, and that's why I fangirl.
I thought the original was Connie and Eugene until
They were
Katrina.
never OTP.
Okay, now that we understand Libby's fanfiction tendencies, which you can read right here.
Gosh.
Okay, anyway, yes, this is a very good spy episode. It's nice to kind of see Dr. Blackguard in it again, and because Jason doesn't know anything, he completely can fall for he's on the good side. Without a lot
Yeah,
of
that's
convincing,
super interesting to me, the way they set that up. And just, like, the way Jason's out, like, just freshly out of the agency and they get him back in there is... And I love the awkward phone moment constantly where his phone's unplugged and it keeps ringing. The awkwardness of that is just, like, it makes me laugh every single time. I don't know why.
Yes. Although, I think, staying alive. Never mind, 5 people get that joke.
Yeah, fine.
So, Gabe,
It's
I'll tell
it's
you
a
later.
very, very good episode. It may be not a little far-fetched, but I mean, a lot of the Jason or Novacom and Blackguard things are kind of far-fetched, but it's a good episode.
yes. Gabe, sorry, I have to plug my computer in.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. Like, I didn't think it was a great episode. It was good. Plot was good. I wasn't really like going crazy over it.
I mean, well, I do enjoy the action adventure episodes, but because they sometimes have more visual action scenes, that can always be a bit of a problem. But yes, one of the standouts of the album. And it's a nice intro to Jason, officially after Immortal Coil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, we get Roku virus so that we can add to, Darkness Before Dawn stuff.
Foreshadowing.
All right, here's another good one. The Siege of Jericho, episode 292, written by Phil Lawler, aired December 10th, 1994. OT Action News returns to tell the story of when the Israelites invaded the land of Canaan, especially the town of Jericho. I don't like this episode.
Yeah.
As before you said, oh, here's a good one.
I was being sarcastic.
Here's the thing. I've already said on previous podcasts, I like the OT Action News episodes. I feel like this is probably the weakest one out of all of them, but I don't think it's bad. It's enjoyable.
I will be honest, when I was a kid, the OT Action News or any Imagination Station ones going back to Bible times were not my favorite because I was just like, well, this isn't real. This isn't what really happened in the Bible. So, when they add kids to this story, it just when I was younger, it kind of annoyed me. So I never really paid that much attention. So I can't really speak to this one.
And yet you enjoyed Liberty's Kids.
I didn't say that I enjoyed Liberty Kids.
You got pretty excited when I showed you that complete series box set last week.
It was just my childhood coming back to me.
Okay.
And yet you like the Doctor Who episode Hitler.
Oh, not either.
What? Okay.
Okay.
I sort of agree with Libby that I don't like these episodes, but not because they insert kids, but because inserting the kids adds a lot of unnecessary goofiness.
Yeah, I'm kind of indifferent to them because I don't know. I guess there's not, for me, a lot to love about them. I don't know.
I also find it weird that they interrupt normal kids' radio episodes, just kind of for the heck of it. But
Yeah.
all right, so we are going to move on to the next episode because we're running out of things to say on this one. A Code of Honor, episode 293, written by Paul McCusker, aired December 17th, 1994. Jack Allen and Jason Whittaker come across information about a secret group led by Wit called the Israelites. Upon further investigation, they meet with one of the members, Billy McPherson. So again...
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, this is foreshadowing Darkness Before Dawn, and I feel like in the context of that, it's an interesting episode, but I feel like without knowing about it, it's kind of doesn't make sense.
Especially because they never come up again until that point.
Yeah, it
Right.
seems like, why are they talking about this? It just, so it had some random group that did good deeds, I guess? And it's just kind of like, doesn't really fit, really, unless you know that they're building up to them coming back. But there's no, like, trace that they're gonna do that at the end of the episode.
Right.
I also feel like
Although,
it was probably like just a bad example for the kids listening. Like, how many parents are really going to be okay with their kids going like painting some neighbor's fence because they heard it on?
well, this was... Oh. I mean, this was Odyssey, so it's nice and small. Although it's apparently based off of something in the books.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what that says. There was something else I needed to mention. Oh yes, this does add credence to our headcanon. Mr. Whittaker is a Time Lord because they mentioned the phone booth imagination station in this episode.
Oh, yes.
There we go. Spread the word, everybody.
13th Doctor, Andre Stoika.
Mr. Whittaker was the original.
Oh gosh,
Time
please
Lord.
no.
Yeah.
Oh yes. A nice long prayer before we travel through time. And possibly butterfly effect everything. But, you know, this is a good episode. It's a nice Jason and Jack episode. And it's one of the few where they're not fighting.
Yeah, that's good. Because
That's
there is one later on in the album, right, that they're fighting.
Yeah, the video game one.
Yep.
Alrighty. Any other notes before we move on?
No.
Alright. Unto Us a Child is Born, episode 294, written by Paul McCusker, aired December 24th, 1994. Jimmy Barkley directs a live Christmas story radio show. Catastrophe and hilarity ensue. In the middle of the program, Mary really goes into labor, so George and Jonna rush off to the hospital to give birth to Stuart Reed Barkley. Meanwhile, Eugene and Katrina can't decide what gift to get each other, ending with Eugene realizing he is in love with her. Okay,
How many
well,
times
I mean,
does Eugene have to realize he's in love with Katrina?
that's a good point, and we had to do the annoying, what do I give her episode?
Yeah, and I feel
Yeah.
like he like has this like divine revelation that he loves Katrina like 6 times before he actually does something about it. Like when he grows out his mustache and shaves it, and like there's all these times that he like realizes he loves Katrina, and I don't understand why we have to keep going through this.
You've clearly never been a man in love, Libby. Elizabeth? My post-it note fell down, sorry.
No, I have never been a man in love.
Yeah, so
I'm
you don't
proud
understand
of
that
that.
growing a mustache is quite a symbol of your love for somebody, and I'm losing my train of thought.
Yeah, let's cut this weird sidetrack. My opinion on the episode.
Will's gonna start
Um,
complimenting my ashy brown hair again.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. So, I think this is an enjoyable episode. I feel like, again, it's a little like, okay, Jimmy, you couldn't find anyone but your mom to play Mary.
But it's funny because
Like,
her name's Mary.
when you know she's like, oh, she's very far into pregnancy, and it's very possible she's gonna give birth around this time.
Actually, that brings up a good point. Does anyone know anyone who their water broke at a super inopportune moment?
Well, I'm sure there
This is too much information for an Odyssey podcast.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
this is a little weird. Well, let's.
Okay, sorry.
Let's move on.
We
I was
don't
just
have to
curious.
have we don't have to have a random discussion for each episode.
Although it was nice, you know,
can
we
just
finally get to
discuss
have the kid
episode.
born, so... And I like
Yeah.
radio catastrophe episodes, so sorry I made that awkward. Soaplessly Devoted, episode 295, written by Marshall Younger, aired December 31st, 1994. Jason Whittaker creates a program from a room of consequence that lets Erica Clark become a major character in her favorite soap opera, Medical Center of Love.
Okay. This is such a...
This is ridiculous. Okay, that's
What parent
Yeah. I'll
lets
start it off
their
with that.
child watch a soap opera? First of all,
They're mostly
And here's the
harmless.
well, they did
Well-
kind of address that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I feel like it's not enough to have a whole devoted episode to how soap operas are bad, because here's the problem. I don't think an 8-year-old would be entertained by it, and like a 12 or 13-year-old would realize this isn't real life. Like, I feel like... Okay. I feel like a good majority of them might be like, okay, I get that's a little out there.
yeah, but I think like it's one of those things like Odyssey trying to address a current issue that just kind of dates them, which I like. Whenever they do that, it rubs me the wrong way, and I'm like, what happened to Timeless Odyssey? We don't need to be around 12-year-olds watching soap operas.
Well, soap operas have been around since the 50s, so...
Well,
Right.
here's the question.
But it was
that
probably
some...
like at that year, it was probably like a major hot topic of society.
That's probably
Well,
true.
and here's the thing. If it was about, like, just TV and how TV can be inaccurate, like, that would be better. But one thing with soap operas is, part of soap operas, if you watch them, they're really corny a lot of the times.
right.
Yeah,
Like-
I think it would have been better executed, just like John said about TV in general.
Does anyone remember they better executed this with All the Difference in the World, like an album later?
Yeah, about
The kid...
problem. That's a little bit of a better way. Yeah.
That's a better way to talk about it, and I agree, even if they had, like, picked a Law and Order-esque drama instead of a soap opera, that would have worked a lot better.
I do
Yeah.
feel that it was a good idea to use the
Room of Consequence?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think though if they had just done it about like TV in general and had the end goal be talking to kids about guarding your minds and hearts in general, then it would have been a lot more like relevant and poignant and not so like, oh, I can tell what you were talking about in society at this point when this was written. I just think it was kind of unneeded for it to be specifically about soap operas.
Absolutely, but it's still not as bad as Castles and Cauldrons, which could be considered straight-up propaganda.
That's
Right.
true.
Although, if you...
What did you do with the board, Mr. Whitaker?
I destroyed it. BAM! Okay. Any other notes about this episode?
Nope.
You did it, darling.
On to the next one.
Okay, Red Wagons and Pink Flamingos, episode 296, written by Marshall Younger, aired January 17th, 1995. Erica Clark loses her best friend, Kim Peterson, at a birthday party, and Jack Allen has a problem with Jason Whittaker bringing video games into Wits End.
Again, Odyssey is dating themselves. Bringing video games. Like, I get
Yeah.
I get they want to address it, but it just loses its timeless classicness to me. And that could just totally be a personal thing, but
Well, at least video
Like-
games are still a thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the whole thing where it's a big problem, and also like arcade games and stuff.
Well, right.
Right.
And what bothers me more is this is the start of Jason and Jack fighting and never really getting along after this.
Yeah.
Just...
Which, I mean, I get it's almost supposed to be each one's like a different half of Mr. Whittaker in a way.
And they're clashing, I get that.
Yeah, but it always, sometimes it seemed forced.
but at least...
Yeah.
And one,
Like, this
why?
seemed a little bit forced because I don't feel Jason would have been so insistent on doing this. Like, he would have, like, tried to understand Jack's point of view a little bit more.
Right. That could be... That's probably very true.
And, like...
Oh.
No, you can go. No, you can go.
So I guess here's my take on all this. The Bible is profitable and accurate for all time. So I feel like just in general, if Odyssey stuck to teaching Bible principles, like guarding your heart, guarding your mind, guarding your eyes, guarding what you let into you, just like that would just be so much more focused than trying to deal with social issues as well. Because when kids know all of these principles, then it speaks to all of these issues, and they, like, I feel like it's a different discussion they can have with their parents or whatever, rather than trying to put it in a 20-minute radio drama.
Yeah. So as a resident gamer, John, what's your take on that?
Well, honestly, well, first, I don't really care, but, I feel like, one, you couldn't turn the sound down on the machines, which was, like, a huge issue. Like, oh, it's so loud. Well, one, how is it loud enough that he could hear it through the whole store? That seems a little... Like, arcades are loud, yeah, that's because it's one giant room full of, like, 100 machines all going off at once. This was, like, 5 machines.
Right.
Yeah.
Although,
I also feel like video games aren't all that. Like, it didn't necessarily have to be this major issue because video games aren't all that.
right, and
Right.
It was more of the Jack and Jason issue than the video game issue.
And, like, if it had been something about, like, oh, this game has, like, kind of, is a little bit violent, but it was like, oh, it's just games in general. Well, from it sounded like Pac-Man-esque
Yeah.
gameplay. So it's like, that's not really violence.
the worst, and the other thing is, Jason thinks it's going to be effective if he puts a question at the end of each level. If you know anything about video games, kids pass around the secrets to get through everything, so...
Yeah, like...
It's C.
How long is it going to take everyone playing that game for one kid to figure it out and just tell everyone else what it
Yeah.
is?
Right. I mean, unless you have to type in the question with the joystick.
Yeah.
This is taking
I
forever.
think, like, decent concept, not executed well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we've got the Kim and Erica subplot, which is way less interesting.
Yeah, we...
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't even remember it.
Double checking the synopsis, although I did just listen to the episode an hour ago, and I already forgot about it.
It was,
Kim shows up late to Erica's birthday or something, and they just get mad at each other.
Oh, classic causing conflict between good friends type of deal.
Liz and Mandy. That's coming up, guys. Alright. Next, an episode I have a very interesting memory about. Blackbeard's Treasure, episode 297, written by Phil Lawler, aired January 14th, 1995. Jack Allen tells Jason Whittaker a story about him and Whit when they were children and thought they discovered Blackbeard's secret treasure.
Is this not like a twist on some classic novel?
It might be. I don't 100%.
I feel like it's a twist on like Moby Dick or something.
I don't think it's a twist on Moby Dick.
Yeah, Moby Dick
Or
doesn't
not
sound
Moby
quite...
Dick. No, but there's a classic novel, I forget who it's by, that has two people finding a cave full of treasure, two little boys finding a cave full
What?
of
Treasure Island?
No.
It's
Yeah.
not little. It's not little boys though.
Tom Sawyer?
Oh. I don't
Oh,
know.
it might be... Tom Sawyer has something kind of like that, but...
Could we
I
get
think
back...
it's just in general, like, there's a lot of literatures about young kids finding treasure.
Alright, back to the episode. I think this is an okay episode. A nice Jason, Jack and Whit story, but we're getting more of that with the Adventure Club next year.
It's true.
Right.
There's apparently a story of how Jack and Whit meet, which actually I think is going to be kind of interesting.
Yeah,
that'll
I
be
like
good.
like the flashbacks to Whit's life specifically. I really like the one about Whit finding his wife and it actually being Jack's girlfriend at one point.
Yeah, that
Here's
episode...
another Doctor Who tie. Okay, so the fact that both main characters that we feel like you know them, but you really don't know their background, that they're just mysterious,
Yeah,
like Whit and the Doctor.
that's true. Oh, this week on Doctor Who, we did find out when he sleeps, so that's kind of nice.
Okay, well, let's go back to
That's
Odyssey.
irrelevant. But anyway, there's something about just like Whit and Jack and like the history that the hopeless romantic in me loves.
Absolutely.
See, you wanted a feminine appeal to this podcast, so I'm giving it to you.
Well, thank you. We all needed that.
I think this is an enjoyable episode. It's like it's one of the first times we get to see how like they interacted, how Jack and Wint know each other. I think it's a good episode. A little boring at times, maybe, but overall enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little frightening for a normal Odyssey episode. Would you?
Yeah, I don't totally 100% remember, but yeah, it's a pretty decent.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely catered to a slightly older audience, but
Right. And
it's a good one.
And I interestingly remember this episode and the chicken episode that was a very transparent drug parallel were packaged together at our Christian bookstore when I was a kid, and you could buy them for like 50 cents a piece, and you handed them out at Halloween. I got a cassette tape! Ah! I got a cassette tape. Okay. Because they're both spooky episodes. But, yeah, I just remember the ghost and the whole episode's a little odd, but maybe it's Jack remembering it a little differently than it actually happened.
I think it's just, I mean, Odyssey's not against doing odd stuff, so.
Alright, I'm just saying, don't you remember some events when you were a kid a little more fantastically than they actually happened?
Well, yeah, so that's possible. I don't think Odyssey was going that deep into it, but.
Alright.
I mean, I think it just like has multiple levels of interest to cater to multiple audiences. Is what they try to do
Right. Alright.
as their core audience got older.
Any other comments? Yes.
Nope.
Alright, that wraps up this album. Final thoughts?
Solid album,
Yeah.
Yeah.
ups and downs.
All right.
I would have shifted some of the episodes that involve the Darkness Before Dawn plot later because it's almost a year gap. And I just found that a
Yeah.
little weird.
I kind of wonder if they were like testing some of their ideas out with like a focus group and then revisiting them after they got some feedback, type of deal. But I don't know.
I think it was two things. They wanted a long-term thing, and I think they were dragging their feet to see if they could find a new wit.
Yeah.
I wonder if that had anything to do with the gap.
Definitely could have.
John, Gabe?
Yeah, pretty good album. I always love if the Barclays are involved,
Oh, yes.
so that always makes a good album to me.
Yeah, I feel like they were just trying to, I mean, they planted some seeds, or like, if people don't like this, we'll, not put it in. Because I feel like the stuff they put in were stuff that maybe they were worried people wouldn't like.
Right, the only thing they couldn't have written around was what Glossman was actually up to. Everything
Right.
else they could have ditched.
They could have even really ditched Blackguard if they wanted to. If, like, people were happy he was dead.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah.
Alright, everyone. We're gonna move on to the favorite segment of the show, Trivia!
Huzzah!
And I'm assuming I'm the only one with a question this week.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
You would probably be correct with that.
I have a question.
What?
Oh, you go first.
Gabe, this is scaring me, but okay.
Whenever Gabe has a question, it's bound to be humorous.
Yes.
Okay, what's your question?
There's that gal's cackle in the background, but, okay. Alright. In the episode My Date with Dad, what kind of car does Ed get to drive his daughter around in?
Hot dog.
Hot dog mobile.
Yeah,
See,
it's
John?
a hot dog.
Because John always complains my questions are too hard. So,
Well, like
That was
one
like
time.
one of my favorite episodes in like 4th grade because I got that album for my birthday, my like 9th birthday.
what were you saying, John?
You had one question one week that was like so obscure. You're like, what was the name of this one character that was mentioned once in the episode? And I'm like, I don't.
No. It was like, what was the code
Okay.
to open the room in the
Right.
Treasure of Lamont? Okay,
Boys. They're arguing.
Gabe, what's your
This
question?
isn't a Family Feud episode.
Okay, what is Mr. Whitaker's middle name?
Avery?
Oh my
Avery.
gosh, yeah. I thought that'd be harder.
Really?
But do you know? Okay, this is a question for the hardcore official Adventures in Odyssey podcast listeners. Do you know where that name came from?
The phone book.
No. That's where Whitaker came from. Avery came from the package of Avery brand labels sitting on the shelf in the room they were brainstorming in.
Oh my.
Sounds good.
a book of a Bible, labels, and someone's name in the phone book. What a way to name wit.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, everyone. That wraps up this podcast. Join us next week when we will be talking about one of my bottom 5 albums, album 55, The Deep End.
Oh, and there's a few problems with that album.
And it's not because they ditched Vakani and Mitch thing. It's about the 4-parter in that one. So, I'm Will.
I'm Gabe.
I'm Elizabeth.
I'm John.
We'll see you all next week.